Hey guys, welcome to this little video. Rather than doing a full topic today, I'm going to give you 10 very small, very quick tips that will make your modeling a lot easier, a lot faster. Just quality of life improvements, some things that can take you a while to stumble across on your own, but should be a great help. So let's get started. Okay, first little tip here, finding a lost gizmo. So your gizmo is this little three-pronged cursor that we have here. If you want to move, if you want to rotate anything, we do it by manipulating the gizmo, selecting a certain part of it, and moving on the selected axis. So what can happen is that, accidentally or not, you may switch it off. So you will just see something more like this, just the three axes. You can still actually move around, but you've less kind of knowledge of where it's going to go. Gizmo's really handy for helping you navigate that 3D space. How do you find it if it disappears? Very simple. Hold Control, hold Shift, and press the letter X. Control Shift X brings it back, just toggles it on and off. Control Shift X, Control Shift X. There we go. Never lose it again. Okay, tip number 2, how to actually use our gizmo. So let's look at our little model here. We've got the move tool selected. We have these three axes. Pay attention to how the color changes whenever we use our gizmo. If I only want to move my object here backwards in the y-axis, so further back towards the left here, notice how when I hover over the y-axis it turns yellow. And when I click on it, whilst it's hovered yellow, no matter where I move the mouse, it will only move in that axis. And you can see in the top view here that it is only moving in the y-axis. If I select x-axis instead and highlight it yellow, you see it only moves in the x-axis. Same for the z-axis. Only one direction. This is really good if we're trying to position an object. And we just need to nudge it slightly. We're just trying to eyeball it. We don't need to know the exact numbers, but we know we want to move in a particular direction. We can move in two directions at once, two axes at once. Instead of hovering over one of these arrows, you'll notice we've got three wee squares in among the corner. With this, we select the relevant square, and we can move it in two axes at once. So here we're moving it in both the z-axis and the y-axis. And same thing works for Z and X, just highlight the correct square, or even the X and Y. It can be a wee bit fiddly to pick this one, but hover over there and you can pick the X and Y. And you see even the arrows themselves are highlighted yellow. This also applies to our rotate tool. When we hover over a particular axis, you will see it turns yellow. The rotate tool I find can be quite finicky, but it works exactly the same way. And even our scale tool works the same. We can scale in one direction, we can scale in the other direction. By hovering over the triangle that connects those axes, we can scale in. Oops, let me see. Oh, a little bit of a glitch there. There we go. By hovering over two of them and select the triangle between them, we can scale in two directions at once. Or if we want to scale up uniformly entirely, if we hover right round about the middle, we select the full triangle and this will scale up in all three axes at once. Awesome. Okay, tip number 3 is looking at our two selection modes, partial mode or complete mode. If we go to our mesh here and we are in sub-object mode and I want to select, say, certain polygons, I can click and drag a rectangular marquee with my mouse, just left clicking, and it will select any polygon that this little marquee box touches. There we go. However, if I toggle this little button here, the window crossing box, what will happen now is that I will only select those polys that this marquee entirely encapsulates. So if it just partially ticks a polygon, it won't be selected. It has to fully select that polygon and then it'll be added to my selection. So this can be quite useful if you're trying to be precise in your selections. Another useful little tip to be aware of when selecting things, we can hit the ignore back facing button. So generally you'll have this on. If I make a little selection here and we select these polygons, you'll see that these are the only ones that are selected. If we deactivate this ignore facing and we select the same polys again, you'll notice that it actually continues through to the back side and selects more. It might select polygons that we don't actually want to select. So just make sure that ignore back facing is on if you only want to be selecting these polys that are facing you. Okay, quick tip number 4, how to quickly move a mesh to our origin point. So got this mesh here and I want to move it back to our little center point in world space. The black line on the grid here, that's 0, 0, 0. Rather try and manually eyeball this, which would be nigh on impossible, I could, if I wanted to, type in the numbers here, 0, 0, 0. Alternatively, I can type any number in here. I can position my object, my mesh, anywhere I want using these 3 wee numerical boxes here. But quick tip, if we want to set them quickly back to the 0 point, if I just right click on these little arrows, that will zero them out for me. This also works for rotation as well. If I switch my rotation and just turn this at a bizarre angle, you'll see the actual angle on each axis is recorded here as well. Same thing, the little uppy downy arrows I can use to rotate this. If I just right click on them, right click, it will reset my rotation back to the default. Very, very handy, especially if you want to export your mesh. Okay guys, quick tip number 5, moving the pivot point. This one ties in quite nicely to tip number 4. So you notice that our gizmo on our object, it appears at a certain point on the object. Now on a cylinder, it always appears at the bottom, in the middle. Now what if we want to move that pivot point? What if we can find a more useful place to put it? Well, we want to go over to this third little tab here, which is called the hierarchy tab. And I want to click this little button that says affect pivot only. When I click this and it turns blue, now whenever I have my move tool or my rotate tool, scale tool, whatever, but mainly the move tool will affect the pivot point. When I move this, the gizmo itself moves. The object stays where it is and the gizmo moves. So now if I turn this off, now if I want to rotate my object, you'll see that it will rotate around this pivot point that I have moved outside the object. This is really useful through various operations. Your pivot point can move or maybe become somewhere you don't want it when you do a lot of extrusions and stuff to your mesh. So it's good to be able to move the pivot point. If you want to quickly center on your object, so for example, I've moved it out there, it's totally useless out there, I want to put it back somewhere useful, I will reactivate my affect pivot only and hit center to object. Boom, knocks it right back in the middle. So you can see if we look at our other windows here, we can see whereabouts it appears. It's right in the middle. So between the topmost vertex and the bottommost, the leftmost and the rightmost vertex, it will put it right bang in the middle. Really, really useful. Just remember then to deactivate affect pivot only and come back into your other tabs. And there we go, moving the pivot. Okay guys, tip number 6, sub-object selection, and I'm going to show you a few ways you can manipulate your selections just to save you a bit of time when trying to pick certain polygons. So for example, I want to take this top ring of polygons here. I can manually just control click on every one of them, and this is good if I want to select particular polygons to edit in a certain way, but if I want to take this whole ring, a bit tedious to do that, especially if I have a much denser polygon mesh. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hover over either one of these adjacent polygons, hold the shift key, and you'll see that we get this yellow ring. And this will select all the polygons that are connected in one continuous edge loop. So if I just click that, you'll see they all turn red. Brilliant. This will work either vertically or horizontally. If I hover here, we can go either direction. This will also work for edges. If I hold shift and very delicately hover over, it's kind of hard to see, it's very, very finicky, but you will see that we can get that yellow loop there. Holding the shift key, we just click and it'll select that entire edge loop. Another way we can do this, by the way, is just control double click on an adjacent and it will do the same effect.
Another great tip, one that you don't really see explained, or it takes a little while to come across, but can be very useful in the right situation. We've got our edges selected here. Now, what if I wanted to just select those vertices that those edges are connected to? So we're in edge mode. If I hold the control key and then click to go into vertex subobject mode, you will see that this ring, of vertices remains selected. Likewise, we can control click back into edge mode. Now, when we go back into edge mode, what it's going to do is take every edge that's connected to those vertices, so you can see that it has in fact grown the selection a little bit. But what we can also do then is control click into polygon mode, and we'll select all the polygons that our selected edges are connected to. So for example, I'll select just this polygon here, and if I just zoom in, control click on our edges, it's just going to select those 4 edges that are attached to that polygon. Control click on vertices, it's going to give us those 4 vertices that that's connected to. We can do this in any order we want. Likewise, here's a very, very good one actually. If you ever want to select all of the polys in a ring, really quick way to do it, just select that one vertex in the middle, control click on polygon mode, and boom, all selected. This is actually a really, really handy wee thing. When you get a complex mesh, it can be hard to maybe navigate and get your mouse into certain vertexes or certain polys. So being able to manipulate and cross over your selection can come in really handy. Tip number 7, guys. Very, very handy little tip here, how to quickly copy a mesh. So got my mesh here. Normally, if we want to copy it, what we would do is right click, go down to clone, and then we get this little window here. We choose copy instance reference. Whatever one you want to do, just hit OK. And what this will do is make a clone in exactly the same spot. So if I move this over, you can see we have a clone. Another quicker way of doing this is if we just select our object and we have our move tool selected. If I hover over an axis, hold the shift key and now just move, it will automatically create that duplicate for us without going into that menu. But what it will do is then it will bring us up the menu after the fact. And what we can also do in this little menu is, instead of just creating one copy, if I increase this number, it will create as many as I want, each an equal distance apart from that first drag of the move tool. Very, very useful. Okay, tip number 8. This is a very, very important one. We are talking about our unit setup. Something that is very easily overlooked when we first start our modeling in 3D Studio Max. Very easy to overlook this, is to set up the units that we're actually using. So you'll notice here, if we go to our create panel, we're going to create a wee box. You'll see that the size is listed in centimeters. It may be listed in meters, it may be listed in millimeters, but how we change this to your preference is to go to customize, scroll down to unit setup, and we are going to get this little window here. So why this is important is if we're going to take our stuff into a game engine, for example, and it's working with physics, working with gravity, changing the scale that we're working with, 100 meters is going to behave a lot differently to 100 centimeters in terms of the time it takes for something to drop, how far light is going to be cast through our scene, stuff like that. So it's really important that we know what units we're working with. Generally, we are going to work with centimeters if we are going to go into the Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine also works in centimeters. If you're working for architectural practices, you might change this to millimeters, or if you're working on large scale citywide meshes, you might change this to meters, or if you're doing terrain, you might want to change it to kilometers. But generally, for most modeling purposes, centimeters is a good way to leave this. We can also click this button here for system unit setup, and this we can change as well from millimeters to centimeters, kilometers, etc. We can also do feet, inches. Don't think we'll be using that very much unless you're maybe in the US. I would leave this at millimeters, but we're going to take our display unit scale to centimeters, and that way when we are modeling stuff out, we know the exact scale it's going to be. It can be very easy to, say, model a mesh like this, thinking it's going to be about the size of a car tire, and then when we import it into Unreal, we realize it's actually the size of a button. So make sure you have your unit set up. So for example, if I want to make a little box here, and I drag it out, I can see there is 3 by 4 by 4 centimeters. I know that's very, very small. Another thing you might find useful when setting up your units is also to set up this little grid underneath. So if we go to Tools, and we go down to Grids and Snaps, and Grid and Snap Settings, if we just click over on this third little tab here for Home Grid, we can set up the spacing and the number of grid squares that we have. It starts out very, very small with 7. So if we're working in centimeters, that's not going to give us a lot of room to play with unless we're making very, very small objects. So we can change this up. We can maybe set that to 20, and we could set it to have, we'll just hit OK on that. And you can see now we have 20. But if we go on that again, Grids and Snaps, Grid and Snap Settings, Home Grid, and now instead of being spaced at 1 centimeter, we could space this to every 5 centimeters, and you'll see the difference that this makes. If I just click onto something else, you'll see that's extended that out there. So now I have a larger grid that is spaced over every 5 centimeters. So you can set this however you want. It can be really useful to do this if you're doing modular buildings and every piece is going to be 1 meter wide, or a modular piece of machinery and every piece is going to be 5 centimeters wide. If you set up your grid to the same size, it can help you kind of eyeball the size of things. Okay, tip number 9, very useful but also very, very fiddly, is the rotation snap. So I've attempted this about 20 times and it never seemed to work exactly as I wanted to, but let's give it a go and see if we can get it. If I choose my rotation tool and I want to rotate my object, I can select across any one of these axes I want just by highlighting it. Now it's very, very fiddly and it doesn't always stick to the axis, but luckily this time it worked first time. So if I want to rotate, easy enough, but you can see as I rotate it's giving me down to 2 decimal points of accuracy. Now if I want to do a very precise rotation of say 45 degrees, it's going to be very, very hard to eyeball that and get it exactly precise. So what I can do is just click this little icon here. It's like a little right angle with a magnet beside it. This is the angle snap tool. And with this activated, all of my rotations will default to 5 degrees. Now it is very, very fiddly, and sometimes when I click on an axis, it will not actually stick to that axis. And it will just rotate whatever way you want. Luckily, it's worked first time this time, but it can be very fiddly. You'll have to get very used to the Control Z key with this one. But you can see now as I rotate, it is sticking to 5 degree increments. So this can be very useful for machinery parts if we want to rotate by a certain amount. And 5 degrees is a good number that we can get most rotations we want that divide equal into 360. If that's not precise enough for you, you can right click on the little icon here. I'll bring up another little menu where you can set the amount you want that snap to actually work to. So it can be 1 degrees, 10 degrees, 3 degrees, 12 degrees, whatever you want. But very, very useful tool, if a little finicky. So let me see. It's actually working first time now. I tried this about 20 times, and every single time it was not sticking to the axis, and it was rotating in all kind of directions. But of course, now that I'm recording that and saying it, it works perfectly. Just my luck. Okay guys, final little tip in this video is about resetting our transforms. Now this is something that can save us a lot of headaches down the line when we finish our meshes and it's time to export them out to Unreal Engine, ZBrush, Substance Painter, whatever it may be. The mathematics, what's going on behind the scenes in 3D Studio Max, doesn't always translate over perfectly to those other softwares, and what we see in our viewport in Max isn't always what we're going to get in those other softwares. What can happen is that we see our normals can get flipped inside out, or certain objects can rotate or scale out of sync with the way they're meant to look with a model. And there's different reasons why this can happen. If we use a combination of the scale tool and then we move our vertices out of place, things like that. Although it looks right in Max, doesn't always translate over to these other softwares. So a good little thing to do anytime you're about to export a mesh or a game prop or whatever it may be is to reset our transforms and make sure that what we see is in fact what's going to be exported out. So how we do this, we select our object or objects that we want to export out. We'll come over to the hierarchy tab here, and when we scroll down, we're going to see a little panel here that says adjust transform. And we just want to click transform and scale, and that will make sure that these are all exactly the way they should be, orientated correctly, scaled correctly, and we're not going to get any surprises when we export our mesh. Another thing we can do is go over to the utilities panel here and click on this little reset XForm button. And when you click on that, you'll see a little reset transform button underneath. And again, whatever object is selected, we click that. And this will just make sure that everything is hunky-dory and we're not going to get any surprises. We're hopefully, all being well, we're not going to see any changes in Max when we do this, but under the hood, it is resetting a few wee things that could cause us trouble later on. So once we've done that, we'll just click that again to deactivate it. And now we're good to go. We're good to export.